Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Field Facts with Forrest. And today we're going to talk about a question from a gentleman named Justin Harris about early season goose hunting. So here, getting up close to the beginning of early season goose hunting. I know all of us have been waiting a long time. Seems like snow goose shooting ended a long time ago, especially with Canada being shut down. So we're all itching and we're ready to get back out there and go do it. So not too much of a wait left. Now, when we're going out here and we're doing some of this early season stuff, it's different than your mid-season or your peak migration type hunting, because flat out, the food sources are different and there just aren't as many geese around. It's just your local populations. Instead of hunting fields of 200 or 300, you might only be hunting fields of 30 or 40. So you kind of have to have a different approach when it comes to this. And we're going to talk about all that stuff today. So again, Justin Harris basically reached out and he was asking about spread size and shapes when it comes to early season goose hunting. We're going to go through a couple other things when it comes to early season stuff, like scouting and a couple ways to hide. But primarily today, we're just going to talk about how to get some of those early season Canadas in the back of your truck. All right, so we're going to start with scouting, and typically in the early season, the best way to find these places is to go and find these first grain fields that have been cut, whether it's wheat fields or whether it's silage cut corn fields, even alfalfa sometimes, or grass. But typically it's going to be those wheat and silage cut corn fields that get cut first, where those birds know year after year that they're going to get cut. They're going to go out early and they're going to go find those within a few days of them being cut. Even if the fields aren't cut, a week in advance of the season, it just takes a couple days for these birds to find them. So if you see farmers out and about in your area, looks like they're getting ready to harvest corn, go out there right around sunset early in the morning and go check it out. With the warmer temperatures in the early season, the birds are more prone to move early and late without kind of dragging things out or getting a late start off the roost like they do when it's cold. When it's warm, typically, as soon as they can see they're out and going, and a lot of times you'll be shooting honkers right there at shooting light, which is pretty rare when it comes to later in the year. So go out there and look for these geese early and late in those early cut grain fields. And another place to look in small bodies of water closer to the middle of the day, say 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, earlier than the winter, obviously with the time change, but typically the middle of the day, they'll go back to either their roost or local farm ponds, and they'll sit on a day loaf if they're a long way from their typical roost. And that's a great way to shoot them too. You can back shoot them in those day loafs and it really won't affect the main roosts, and you can have some really great success doing things like that too. So keep an eye out, not only in those fields, but also in small local bodies of water. Anywhere you would imagine a goose might sit, or you might see it on a painting on someone's wall of a goose sitting behind someone's farmhouse, keep an eye out, and don't be shy to ask. A lot of times you get told yes, a lot of places you wouldn't expect to. So don't be shy to ask permission for stuff like that. Now, once we've found the birds and we figure out where we're going to hunt, what time they're going out, all that good stuff that we always want to know when we're getting ready to go and build a hunt, especially after we've had 7 months off to sit and think about it and wait for these birds to come. Now it's time to start thinking about our spreads. Okay, with fewer geese in the area, I don't run as big of spreads. I usually run small to mid-size spreads, being like, if you're on an X, maybe 5 to 10 dozen decoys. And if you're doing a little bit of trafficking, so you're trying to short stop them, you couldn't get on the X, but you're trying to get on the geese, maybe running something a little bit bigger, maybe 20 to 25 dozen. You can run more than that, but keep in mind the number of geese in your area. If you're hunting a big feed of geese and there's a couple hundred geese out there, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and throw a big spread. But if you've only got 50 or 75 geese and all of a sudden they go out and see 40 or 50 dozen decoys sitting in a field, not to say that it won't work, but they're going to know, and the adults who have been hunted year in and year out, especially at the beginning of the year, will probably be wise to what's going on, and they may be a little bit more keen on things. So kind of keep that in mind. I like to be fairly realistic with my spread size. If my field had a couple hundred geese in it, I'll throw a couple hundred decoys out. If it had 50 geese in it, I'll throw about 50 decoys out, so it doesn't really throw them off guard. It may be more geese than they're used to seeing, especially if it's the first flock of the day. There's always that debate. The first flock off knows they're the first flock off, and they may not be as interested in coming. But we overthink a lot of this stuff sometimes. When it comes down to it, just try to make it look realistic, all right? So we're gonna be smaller, and early in the year, you still have young of the year spending time with their family. So it's family groups. It's not as many pairs and singles kind of spread out, although they do look good to kind of mix them in. But you're not gonna have your big groups of a couple hundred birds really clustered up tight. The best thing that I like to do is set up family groups anywhere between 2 and about 10. And maybe, what we just kind of build the spread shape with those family groups, and then wherever you want them to land, where you want it to seem like there's a big concentration of food, and try to center them up. What I like to do is I like to throw 2 or 3 of those family groups, not in one bunch, but just adjacent each other in close proximity. So in the last episode, you heard me talking about hunting both lessers and graders out of the same field. In this case, with the graders, instead of just building a big mob or spreading the groups 20, 25 yards apart, where you want to center those geese up, maybe only put 5 yards between those family groups, and stagger a couple family groups in close proximity, like they're all eating off a grain spill or something. Say the truck went through, hit a bump, knocked out a bunch of corn. Those birds will kind of cluster up on that. And that's all you need, 10, 15 decoys in the same spot, maybe 20 decoys in the same spot, to kind of show that there's a concentration of food there. And those other big geese, again, leaving alleys for those geese to fly up, because they don't like to fly over the decoys. If you leave them enough room, they'll work up that leg or up in your landing alley and land in close vicinity to those clustered family groups. It's always worked out really well for me. Typically early season, I find that they're not flying as high, so when they come out, they're just clearing the power lines, and they get real low over the field, and they work their way to you, kind of pick up to take a look at things, and then settle right in your face. So the more open your landing zone can be, the better. You want to have basically a blocker at your upwind end, and maybe a leg to kind of guide them into the hole. But you think about it like that, just kind of give them loose, vague directions. Again, not real big spreads. You might cover 75 yards or 100 yards with these, but they're real loose clusters. And where you want them to be, make it really wide open and leave it wide open, and get them in there so they don't have to fly over the decoys. Pretty sound tactics for hunting honkers at any point in the year, but early in the year, you definitely want to take advantage of loose family groups, lots of space. All right, it's going to look really nice and realistic. Now, in the early season, we typically have more cover because we haven't gotten snow, cold weather, had all the grass die or all the leaves dry off the trees and fall off and all that. So we've got some more cover, and we need to take advantage of that. In wheat stubble, great time to use layout blinds. I've had a lot of success out of layout blinds early in the year because you've got a lot of cover. You haven't had cows in the field or birds in the field tearing it all up. Sometimes, you'll have 12 to 18-inch stubble sticking up, it just screams layout blinds. So, get out there, brush some blinds up, and do that. Another thing, you've got a lot of brush around. You've got some real young tumbleweeds. They're not quite as easy to get off the vine, but they will grow in big clusters. So if you build up some tumbleweeds or brush in general on the edge of a field for an A-frame or something like that, it's gonna look really good. Just take advantage of what cover you have in your area, whether it's in the field or on the edge. Like I always say, you're always investing in your hide. The hide is the most important thing when it comes to getting these birds, because if they see you, you don't have any shot anyway. It doesn't matter how many geese are on there. If you're not hidden, you're not going to do well. So keep that in mind. Find the best hide that you've got and take advantage of it. All right. Let's see, another thing that I like to do then, I like to take like hedge clippers, electric or gas-powered hedge clippers. You can go cut a whole bunch of really tall grass for your A-frame or for panel blinds or even for layout blinds, and it's a great time of year to get it, because while it's early and everything's green right now, as soon as you cut it, it's going to start to die. It's going to look good through your week or 2 week long early season, but come time for mid-season hunting, all that grass that you put on your blind is going to die. Now it's going to be nice and brown or yellow like your surrounding area. So I like to spend some time early in the season brushing up my blinds, and especially my panel blinds and my A-frame blinds, so I can have my first good coat of camouflage on there for the year. You know, you don't want to be hunting early in the year with all that dead brown and yellow stuff, unless that's what your area looks like, but typically it's going to be more green. So in the beginning of the year, I strip everything off from the year before, or I probably did it at in the summer when I was cleaning my decoys and doing all that good stuff, organizing the trailer. But now, in the early season, I go out there day before or a couple days before in a similar area and go out there with the hedge clippers and trim everything off, get a good layer of brush going. So then as the year goes on, as I hunt these blinds and use them more and more, now I just have to touch them up as opposed to having to start from scratch. So another thing to consider there, just different ways to hide. So that's going to cover today. Talked about the early season goose stuff, the scouting, again, looking for those early grain fields that are cut, whether it's wheat or silage cut corn. Those are going to be the places those geese are going to hit early. You can short stop them in alfalfa or grass maybe, but they're typically going to be targeting those grain fields. So that's where you need to look, as well as small ponds and bodies of water in the vicinity, but you're looking a little bit later in the day for those. Spread wise, again, loose but smaller, typically very realistic to what you see in the field. Small family groups spread way out, and where you want to center the geese, put a couple family groups real close to each other, make it look like there's a concentration of food. And we've got great hides in the early fall. Go ahead and take advantage of those. Use those layout blinds, use those A-frames on the edge, and really make some awesome greasy hides where you know, those birds are never going to see you. So I hope that helps, Justin. Hopefully you can you know, learn a few things from there and put some of those tips to use. Go ahead, Justin, and email Asher at info@divebombindustries.com. He'll take care of getting you your hat. And for anyone else who's got any questions, please keep them coming. I know I've been saying this for going on, I don't know, 10 episodes now, but go ahead, make sure you send those questions to Forrest@divebombindustries.com. There's 2 R's in Forrest. And go ahead, like and subscribe these and turn on the alerts so you don't miss any of these episodes. Thanks again for tuning in. Send me all those questions. Again, lots of detail in there so I can give you the best answer I can. And we'll catch you next time on Field Facts with Forrest.